Right, everything in my last video was wrong. So yeah, everything in the last video you saw was wrong. When I actually went to test this, so I was doing another video to follow up on the video I did last week to actually test the monitor mode, and I got some stuff. I got a 2 kilowatt heater out here. I set the monitor mode down to a lower threshold to see if it would cut in and start reducing the load, and nothing happened. It drew 10 kilowatts absolutely fine, and it was way over what I'd set. So I thought, what's going on there? And then I actually went and reread the instructions, and actually it wasn't quite what I thought. So let's go and have a look through those instructions and see which of the features we can actually use. Right, welcome to the office. So I've got the Zappi manual up on the screen here, and we want to go to the advanced settings on page 21. So if we just go and grab page 21. So advanced settings. The first thing is the supply grid. To match the number of phases, so in most cases that's going to be 3 single phase, so we don't need to worry about that. Then you've got supply grid device limit. Sets the maximum current that the Zappi will draw, including boost and on fast mode. This is usually if the supply current is limited, like on 16 rather than 32 amps. So we don't need that. So the Zappi is on a 32 amp supply, and everything supplying it can supply 32 amps. That is just to let Zappi know if you've had to install the Zappi on a 16 amp circuit for whatever reason, the Zappi will not draw any more than 16 amps ever, which is obviously not something we want to do, because that would limit the charging in all conditions down to whatever level you set. So that is not what we want to do, but it's a good option to have, and it makes installation quite flexible in certain, it makes installation achievable in certain conditions. Supply grid limit sets the limit that can be drawn from the grid connection, i.e. the maximum import current or the main fuse rating. So, for example, if a property may have a grid supply limit of 65 amps, several appliances are on the property consuming 12 kilowatts, 52 amps, by other appliances, the user wants to fast charge. Without a grid limit set, the total consumption would exceed the allowable import. However, with the grid limit a setting of 60 amps, Zappi would temporarily limit the charging to 8 amps, 1.8 kilowatts. The maximum allowed import current would not be exceeded. So that is the feature that we will now use instead of the group limit monitor mode feature. Now, the reason that I didn't want to use this mode is because I don't really care about the consumption of the house as a total. I only care about the consumption of the garage as a total. Remember, the house has a 100 amp fuse on it, and is perfectly capable of consuming 100 amps. We've got a 50 amp supply into the garage, and that was what I was worried about. I was worried about the 50 amp supply to the garage exceeding. However, having thought about it, because these chargers will be charging at night, if we set a grid limit of 50 amps, which is essentially going to be the limit of that supply running to my garage, then this will have exactly the right effect that we're after here. The Zappi will temporarily limit its input. So if it sees some other consumption, now the downside here is if it sees some other consumption in the house, it will also limit its usage, which is not ideal, because obviously that might not be necessary. If another appliance in the house is using a high amount of amps, not going to the garage supply, then it doesn't really matter. But this is the option that we're going to go for, because it's the only one that will work. Now let's talk about the option that I did want to use. This is on page 23. It actually carries over from page 22. So we've got the CT config settings, and one of the options that you can set is you can set the CT to monitor, and it says monitor any load, for example a washing machine or a lighting circuit. The setting can also be used to limit current drawn by my energy devices on a particular circuit, which includes other loads. See load balancing and current limiting on page 32. And that's what I wanted to do. But the key thing to take away from that is current by my energy devices, plural. So it's not a singular my energy device, it's a group of my energy devices. So what it's saying there is that if you've got a number of my energy devices on a particular circuit, you can set a cap for that will run across all of those my energy devices. So it's not quite what I had imagined it to be, which is a bit of a shame, because if we go down we can see a group limit example here. Limit the current drawn by two Zappi devices. They're in a garage which is fed from a 40 amp supply. A washing machine and a dryer are also in the garage. One CT is clipped round the 40 amp supply to the garage, which is what we did, and wired to the CT2 of one of the Zappi units. Note, the other Zappi unit does not have to have a CT connected, but it will still need to have a CT input configured to be in the same monitor group. And that's how the grouping works. You put both Zappis into the same monitor group 1 or whatever, and then you'll set a group limit to 40 amps. So those units will not exceed 40 amps, but it looks like this is where it gets really weird, right? Because if you set the group limit to 40 amps and your supply is 40 amps and you have a washing machine and a dryer, then they are obviously going to start consuming some of that 40 amps, and therefore the monitor group limit suggests that it's a reactive group. But it seems like you can't have a group of one. So I don't know whether this is a bug. Maybe someone from My Energy can let me know. But by reading this, it really seems to suggest that what I've done should work, but from what I've seen in my testing, it doesn't work. So perhaps that is just a bug, that because there isn't another Zappi, somehow that monitor group doesn't kick in, and therefore you can't have a monitor group of one my energy device. So perhaps if I had another Zappi, all of a sudden, if I'd have put that 2 kilowatt heater on and started to charge, and I'd lowered it down to like 32 amps, we would have seen the Zappi lower its rate of charge to the car. But from what I've seen so far, it just charged full whack, and away we go. So it looks like for the time being, I might seek some advice from My Energy on this one, because even rereading it again, I feel like it really should be doing what it's doing, because clearly by this example it's dynamic. If it was a static example, then in the example they would have said work out how much draw your washing machine and other appliances use in the circuit, and then set your group limit to be lower than that. So you've got the headroom in there all the time for those other units. But it looks like it's monitoring it, so it's going to flex, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So it's super frustrating that it's not working for me. But firmware updates would completely resolve this, and we would have what we want. So I am hopeful that we will get exactly what we want, but at this stage we can just set the grid limit, and that will do what we want to do. And like I say, the only disadvantage there is that in the very unlikely circumstance that, say for example, we have a washing machine, dishwasher working overnight in the house, that might unnecessarily reduce the load because it thinks that 50 amps is all we can draw into the house instead of the 100 amps. So all very complicated. It's a bit of a learning experience. It's a new company as well, so I don't know whether I'm coming up against a bug or a feature. So I will reach out to them. I must say, one of the things they are very, very good at is getting back to you and helping you through any problems that you'll have. But yeah, so sorry about the last video. I think it's not working quite as I had intended it or envisaged it based on what I've been reading here, but hopefully you can see why. And what I would say is, if you've got this situation, or if you're thinking about this kind of situation, then do test it. It's really important just to make sure it's all working. And when you're testing it, just reduce down the load. So if you've got a 50 amp breaker or something in your home and you want to test it, then just lower the limit down to like 32 amps or something like that, and then you can just put a small, like a hairdryer or a heater on, and you can see whether it's actually reacting to it. And that's exactly what I was doing there. So there we go. That's all there is to it for now. Hopefully in some future episodes we'll clear this up and we'll get it working just so. I have had a few questions on the comments of some of the videos to actually go back and actually tell you all what the house setup is for my energy devices, and I think that's a good shout. I guess some of you who are new to the channel might not understand what is going on in the home, because it's been covered in a kind of smattering of videos. So I will go back through and I will do a single video on the setup of the My Energy devices in the home and how they all work together. So expect to see that one in a future episode too. But for now, I'll leave it there. Don't forget to like and all of that jazz. You can dislike the other video as well, because it's just garbage. But I've learned one of the things on YouTube is you never delete a video, you just get all those views. And actually, if you can make it as contentious as possible, it works. But that wasn't my plan. It was just genuinely, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding here, and maybe even it's not working as they even intended it. But we'll see on that one. But anyway, don't forget to like and all that jazz, and we'll see you all in the next one. So today is the day I should have had my new car. So what's going on?